It was 5:30 a.m. when Elena was jolted awake by a loud knock pounding against her bedroom door. "Elena! Get up, we have a busy day ahead," her mother-in-law's voice rang sharply through the wooden frame. Groggy and sore, Elena slowly sat up in bed. Her muscles ached from the previous day's workload. She had spent endless hours scrubbing the entire kitchen and rearranging the dining area. Not a single person had thanked her. As she tied her wrapper and stepped out of the room, her sister-in-law, Monique, passed by with a smirk painted on her lips. "They're waiting for you downstairs," she said mockingly. "Hope you're not planning to let 40 guests go hungry." Elena's chest tightened. She had only been married to David for 7 months, but ever since they moved into his family's home, everything had changed. At first, his relatives had been courteous. Now, they barely acknowledged her unless they wanted something. And David? He no longer stepped in to defend her. "Just do what they ask, Elena. Please. I don't want to start any fights," he would tell her again and again. She entered the kitchen, and froze. The place was a disaster. Dishes piled up in the sink, heaps of raw chicken, vegetables, fish, and yams sat untouched on the counters. Even the large drum of water was nearly empty. "Is no one going to help me?" she asked quietly, already knowing the answer. Her mother-in-law walked in, arms crossed. "This is your responsibility. If you want to be a proper wife, act like one," she said sternly. "In this family, women earn their place. We don't raise them to be soft." Elena bit down the frustration bubbling in her throat. She wanted to scream. But she didn't. Not yet. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She washed, peeled, chopped, and stirred. Her hands moved non-stop. When she sliced her finger, she wrapped it with a piece of cloth and kept going. Sweat dripped down her back, soaking her clothes. No one offered a glass of water. No one came to help. At one point, she stepped outside for a breath of air. Laughter echoed from the living room. David was there, cracking jokes with his cousins. He didn't even glance in her direction. By noon, her body was trembling from exhaustion. Her feet were sore, and her hands red and raw. But still, no one said a word of appreciation. "The food is ready," she finally called out, her voice barely rising above a whisper. Chairs scraped against the floor as everyone rose and gathered around the long dining table. Not a single person acknowledged her. And at that moment, while standing among plates she had prepared for people who treated her like a live-in maid, Elena made a decision. She glanced at the trays filled with steaming dishes. She looked around at the faces of the people who had reduced her to a ghost in her own marriage. They thought they had broken her. They were wrong. She let out a soft smile, not of joy, but of quiet resolve. Because today, she wasn't just serving food. She was serving something else, something they wouldn't forget. Before her marriage to David, Elena lived a full life. She worked as a marketing executive in a small but fast-growing firm. Her boss appreciated her creative ideas, and her campaigns brought in consistent clients. She had her own one-bedroom apartment, a modest little car, and a circle of close, supportive friends. It wasn't luxury, but it was hers. And it was peaceful. Then she met David. He was charming, witty, and attentive. Or so he seemed. He often spoke about family, about tradition, about wanting a woman who was strong but respectful. "You're different, Elena," he once said. "You're the kind of woman I want by my side forever." She believed him. They married in a simple but joyful ceremony surrounded by friends and family. Elena thought it marked the start of something beautiful. But the joy was short-lived. Just 2 weeks into the marriage, David informed her that they'd be moving in with his parents. His mother wasn't well, he said. She needed help around the house. Elena hesitated. She didn't like the idea, but she wanted to support her husband. So, she agreed. That's when the silent suffering began. David's family home sat in a quiet suburb. From the outside, it looked peaceful. But inside, it was ruled by strict expectations and an unspoken hierarchy. His mother, Sandra, ran the household like a general. She didn't have a job, but nothing happened in the house without her approval. She had disliked Elena from the very first day. "Women who talk too much and chase careers aren't real wives," she once said to Elena's face. David's younger sister, Monique, was even worse. At 25, she still lived at home, never cooked, never cleaned, yet constantly treated Elena like a servant. "You're lucky my brother married you," she often sneered, tapping through her phone. "Girls like you usually end up alone." Elena stayed quiet. She wanted to be accepted. She gave up her job. Told her boss she needed time off for family reasons. She hoped it was temporary. But weeks turned into months. And there was no talk of leaving. David began to change. He spent less time at home. When he was around, he barely spoke to her. He stopped standing up for her. When his family insulted her, he stayed silent. One night, Elena gathered her courage to speak up. "David," she said softly, "I feel like I'm invisible in this house. I need your support." He let out a deep sigh. "You're overthinking everything. Stop creating drama. Just be patient." That sentence burned itself into her memory. Be patient. 7 months of patience. 7 months of silence. 7 months of sacrifices. She had let go of her job. Her social life. Her independence. She had become a stranger to herself. Her parents, living in a different city, had warned her. "Make sure they respect you," her mother had said before the wedding. Elena had brushed it off. She believed love would be enough. Now, she wasn't even sure if David loved her at all, but it wasn't the endless chores or constant insults that hurt the most. It was the isolation. Even in a house full of people, Elena felt invisible. No one asked how she was. No one noticed when she was exhausted. No one cared when she was ill, overwhelmed, or simply sad. To find peace, she started waking up early, long before anyone else stirred. In those rare quiet minutes, she would stand by the kitchen window, cupping a warm drink between her hands, watching the sky blush into day. Those were the moments she remembered herself, the woman she used to be. The one who spoke confidently in meetings, laughed loudly with her friends, and had dreams that lit up her eyes. Now, her laugh felt foreign. Her voice, buried. She kept a small notebook tucked under her pillow. Her one sacred space. In it, she wrote letters to herself, questions she was too afraid to ask out loud. Why did you surrender everything? Why don't they see your pain? Where did your strength go? She didn't always have answers. But writing helped her hold on to the tiny piece of herself that hadn't been crushed yet. And on that morning, when she was ordered to cook alone for 40 guests, something began to shift. As she stirred pots over the hot stove, lifting heavy pans and cutting vegetables until her fingers ached, her mind was no longer numb. Her heart was battered, yes. But something deeper was waking up. She wasn't filled with anger. Not anymore. She was done waiting for someone else to change. Done hoping someone would save her. Something inside her had snapped, not like a bone breaking, but like a lock finally clicking open. She wasn't just going to get through the day. She was going to start reclaiming herself, in her own way, on her own terms. And it would begin with this lunch. She stood in the center of the kitchen, carefully spooning steaming jollof rice into a large silver tray. Her hands trembled, but not from the heat. Her nerves were frayed, her mind reeling. All morning, she had worked in silence, surrounded by the echoes of her own thoughts. The laughter in the living room still rang in her ears, the same voices that never once offered to help. One by one, she placed the dishes on the table, rich red stew, golden fried plantains, spicy soup, soft pounded yam. No one said a word. She turned to leave the kitchen, wiping sweat from her brow. The dining table was packed, David's aunts, uncles, cousins, even a few church members. Laughter bounced around the room like a song she wasn't invited to join. David sat at the head, smiling like all was perfect. Elena set down the first tray. No one acknowledged her. No smile. No, thank you. Not even eye contact. Monique leaned toward her friend and whispered just loud enough for Elena to hear, she could have at least made it spicier. Elena's stomach twisted. She looked straight at Monique, then at David. He said nothing. Again. She walked back into the kitchen, picked up the remaining dishes, and served them one by one. When the last tray hit the table, she took a step back and stood quietly in the corner, waiting. In this house, that was the rule, she served last, she ate last, if there was anything left. Then Sandra cleared her throat. Elena, she said loud enough for everyone to hear, next time, try harder. The food's okay, but this isn't the standard we expect for special guests. Light chuckles broke out across the table. David gave a lazy smile. She tried, he said. It's fine, Mom. She tried. The word struck her like a slap. 7 hours of labor. A sliced finger. An aching back. And the only recognition she got was, she tried. Then Gloria, one of David's cousins, a tall woman with too much energy and not enough tact, pulled out her phone and aimed the camera at Elena. Smile for us, chef, she teased. Let's show the internet who cooked this feast. Before Elena could react, Gloria turned her camera toward Sandra and said, and here's the Queen Mother who trained her. Laughter again. Then came the comment that turned Elena's blood to ice. Too bad she's not pregnant yet, Gloria said with a smirk. All this cooking and still nothing to show for it. Silence fell like a dropped glass. Elena stood frozen. She looked at David. He looked away. Sandra let out a sigh. We're praying, she said with exaggerated pity. But you know, some women are just slow. Or maybe not trying hard enough in the bedroom. Elena's chest tightened like it had been cinched with rope. She couldn't breathe. Without a word, she turned and walked away. Up the stairs. Into the bedroom. Closed the door. Locked it. And collapsed onto the floor. Her hands covered her face, but the tears didn't come. Not yet. What came was fire. A low, burning rage that swallowed the sadness. That was it. The final straw. They hadn't just insulted her cooking. They had humiliated her body. Her womanhood. Her marriage. All of it, out loud, in front of everyone. And David had said nothing. She sat up and dragged herself to the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, tired, yes. But something else, too. Fierce. She pulled the notebook from under her pillow and flipped through pages filled with hurt, confusion, and fading hope. But then she found a blank page. And she picked up her pen. This time, she didn't write a question. She wrote a plan. No more begging for kindness. No more hoping to be seen. They were going to see her now. And it would be unforgettable. Downstairs, the silverware clinked and the laughter picked up again. But it wouldn't last. Not for long. Because the next course was coming. And Elena, the real Elena, was ready to serve it. Elena didn't return to the dining room that day. She sat alone upstairs, listening to the muffled laughter echo below, a soundtrack to the life she had been trapped in for months. Her body trembled, not from weakness but from a quiet, focused rage that had finally replaced sorrow. She wasn't sad anymore. She wasn't seeking approval. She was awake. Later that evening, long after the guests had gone and the clinking plates had been washed, David entered their room. His voice was casual, as if nothing had happened. You just walked out in the middle of everything, he said, closing the door behind him. That was rude. Everyone noticed. Elena turned her head slowly to face him. They insulted me, she said evenly. David let out a sigh and sat on the edge of the bed. You're overreacting. You always take things too seriously. They didn't mean it like that. Those words cut deeper than the humiliation. Too sensitive. Again. It's just how my mom talks, he continued. You should be used to it by now. Used to it. Like abuse was something she should get comfortable with. You didn't say a word, David, she said, voice low. Not one word. He shrugged and got up. I'm tired of this conversation. And then he left the room. That night, Elena lay flat on her back, staring at the ceiling. Her eyes didn't blink. Her mind didn't rest. She thought about her old life, the woman she used to be, the dreams she had quietly folded away. And she kept circling one question in her head. Why am I still here? The next morning, for the first time in 7 months, Elena did not rise before the sun. She stayed in bed. She didn't boil water for bathing. She didn't sweep. She didn't start breakfast. By 9 a.m., Sandra was banging on the bedroom door. Elena. Why haven't you boiled water yet? I need to bathe. No answer. The door creaked open. Sandra stepped in and froze when she saw Elena still lying beneath the blanket. What's going on? Are you just going to sleep the whole day? Elena sat up slowly, her face blank. I don't feel well, she said simply. Sandra rolled her eyes. Then get up and take something. This house doesn't run on feelings. Elena didn't move. She just stared at her. Something in that silent gaze unsettled Sandra, a pause, a flicker of doubt. For once, she didn't have a comeback. She left, mumbling under her breath. Later that day, Monique's voice rang through the house. Elena's acting like a queen now. I guess she wants us to beg her. The energy in the home shifted. Tension sat thick in the air, like a storm cloud waiting to break. David barely spoke to her. When he did, his words were sharp and short. I don't know what game you're playing, he said coldly one evening, but it's not going to work. Elena said nothing. She didn't need to. Because she was listening. Watching. Planning. That night, as she passed through the hallway, she overheard a conversation between David and Sandra. The living room door was half closed. She stood quietly in the shadows, her breath shallow. She's changing, Mom, David said. She's not the same anymore. She's lazy, Sandra replied without hesitation. That's what happens when you spoil them early. She thinks she can do whatever she wants now. Should I talk to her? Talk. Sandra scoffed. Teach her. If she wants to eat in this house, she needs to earn it. Elena backed away, heart thudding in her chest. So that was how they saw her. Not as a wife.as labor. As property. And David, the man who once promised to cherish her, was nodding along. The next morning, Sandra summoned a family meeting. David. And Monique. 2 cousins. Even an uncle who didn't live in the house. Elena was called last. She walked into the living room, calm but alert. Everyone turned to stare. Sandra straightened in her seat. We need to address your attitude, she began. You've become disrespectful. Lazy. Careless. And Monique nodded eagerly beside her. Exactly. And you embarrassed everyone by walking out during the party. Elena stood silently, her arms by her side. David didn't say a word. Sandra continued, her voice sharp and rehearsed, from now on, you'll follow a schedule. Wake at 5 a.m., prepare all meals, do the laundry, and assist me with errands. No excuses. No complaints. Elena turned her eyes to David. And you agree with this? She asked. He avoided her gaze. It's just until things settle down. Don't make it worse. Worse? She didn't know it could get worse. But she didn't cry. Not this time. She turned, walked back to the bedroom, and locked the door. That evening, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was from her former boss. Hi Elena. I heard from a colleague that you left. Any chance you'd consider returning? We've got a new project and we'd love to have you back. Her hands shook as she held the phone. An opening. A sign. A way out. She knew David wouldn't approve, but she didn't care. She replied, "Can we talk tomorrow?" And she smiled. The next few days were cold. Punishment came not in words, but in silence. Sandra stopped eating her food. Monique whispered to anyone who would listen, "She's planning to leave my brother. Watch and see." David barely came to their room at all. But Elena wasn't afraid. She wasn't waiting anymore. She was preparing. One afternoon, while scrolling through the family WhatsApp group, she came across a string of messages from weeks earlier. Photos from the party, jokes about her cooking, even one of her awkwardly captured while carrying a heavy pot. Then, something else. A voice note. It had been sent by Monique, clearly meant for a friend, but accidentally posted in the group. Elena's so desperate for attention. I don't even know why my brother married her. Maybe he felt sorry for her. No one deleted it. No one apologized. No one said a word. Elena saved it. Because her moment was coming. Sunday afternoon arrived. The house was unusually quiet, but tension hung heavy, like the calm before a thunderstorm. Elena had spent the morning not cooking, not cleaning, but preparing. She wore a simple dress. Tied her hair back. Her face was clean. Composed. At 2 p.m., she walked into the living room where Sandra, Monique, David, and a few relatives were chatting and sipping drinks. They looked up as she entered. The room hushed. Elena held her phone in one hand, her shoulders square. I need everyone to listen. Monique scoffed. Who gave you the mic? Elena didn't blink. Her voice was calm, steady, but laced with steel. I'm speaking now. And I won't be interrupted. The room froze. Something about her presence was different, too quiet, too controlled. Everyone sensed it. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat. What's this about? Elena's eyes didn't leave his. It's about truth. Respect. And everything I've swallowed since the day I walked into this house. Sandra groaned. If this is another emotional outburst, save it. But Elena didn't pause. I left my job. My apartment. My entire life to build something with you, David, she said, her voice growing firmer. I came here with love. And in return, I was belittled, ignored, and treated like a servant. She turned toward Monique. You mock me every day. You talk about me like I'm worthless. But you never say no to the food I cook or the laundry I wash. Monique stood quickly, pointing a finger. You better watch. Elena raised her hand. Sit down. You're going to listen today. Even Sandra was silent now. Then, Elena pressed play on her phone. Monique's voice filled the living room. Elena is so desperate to be accepted. I don't even know why my brother married her. Maybe he felt sorry for her. Gasps followed. Monique's face drained of color. That wasn't meant. I know, Elena said, cutting her off. That's what makes it worse. She turned back to David, who sat frozen, expression blank. You watched them tear me apart. And you said nothing. You let them break me, piece by piece. But I stayed. I hoped. I waited. Until now. David rubbed his hands together, nervous. Why are you doing this in front of everyone? Because I've been quiet long enough, Elena replied. Then, she pulled up a folder on her phone and handed it to David. He took it, confused. What's this? My job offer. From my old company. I accepted. I start in 2 weeks. Sandra made a disgusted sound. You didn't ask anyone's permission. Elena turned toward her slowly. I don't need permission to live. Not anymore. From her pocket, she took out a small envelope and handed it to David. What now? He asked. My parents are coming next week. To help me move. I'm leaving. Gasps echoed again. Sandra rose from her seat. You're not walking out of this house like that. Not after everything we've done for you. Elena faced her squarely. What have you done for me? Really? Her voice sharpened. You insulted me. You worked me like a maid. You laughed at my pain. You made me feel invisible in my own marriage. David's voice cracked. You're overreacting. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. No, David. I'm finally reacting. You stopped loving me the moment I stopped being convenient. And now you're surprised I'm choosing myself? She paused. I loved you. I gave up everything for you. But love without respect means nothing. No one spoke. Not even Sandra. Elena turned toward the front door, then paused and looked back one last time. Sandra hissed, if you walk out now, don't come back. Elena held her gaze. I'm not coming back. Not to this house. Not to this life. And then she walked out. Out the door. Into the sunlight. She didn't turn around. Because the woman who had entered that house 7 months ago, the one who waited, begged, cried, no longer existed. This new woman. She had nothing left to prove. Elena moved into a modest one-bedroom flat across the city. It wasn't fancy. The furniture was basic. The walls were bare. But it was hers. And it was peaceful. For the first time in what felt like forever, she could breathe without tension sitting on her chest. The day after her move, her parents arrived. Her mother brought warm soup and blankets. Her father fixed the curtain rods and assembled the shelves. They didn't say, I told you so. They didn't ask questions. They just sat with her, held her hand while she wept. That was everything. On Monday, Elena returned to her old job. The moment she walked through the office doors, heads turned. Her former boss welcomed her with a smile and open arms. We're so glad to have you back. At first, the familiar routines felt strange. Her body still carried the trauma. Sometimes, while typing an email, she would suddenly hear Sandra's voice in her mind, criticizing her for breathing too loudly. Or she'd flinch at the sound of a raised voice down the hall. Sometimes, she wondered if David was thinking about her. But she didn't let the thoughts stay. She focused on her work. And she thrived. Her first project brought such impressive results that she received a bonus. She used the money to buy a new sofa and a small bookshelf. It felt like a start. Bit by bit, she was rebuilding her life, one quiet, determined step at a time. One evening, after a long day of work, her phone buzzed. A message from David. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know I should have done more. I hope you're okay. Elena stared at the message for a long time. And then put the phone down. She didn't reply. That night, she pulled out her notebook, the one she used to hide under her pillow. Only this time, she didn't write a question. She wrote answers. I stayed because I loved you. I left because I love myself more. Pain taught me who I am. Respect is not something I should beg for. I'm not broken. I'm beginning again. In the days that followed, Elena began rediscovering the little joys she had long forgotten. A warm cup of coffee in the morning, her favorite playlist echoing through the apartment while she cleaned, a peaceful walk under the early evening sky, these things were no longer luxuries. They were freedom. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, she strolled past a park and noticed a small group of women gathered beneath a canopy. Curious, she stepped closer. They were sharing stories about life, love, and the unspoken scars of emotional abuse. One woman stood, her voice trembling but brave, and said, "Sometimes, it's not the screaming or hitting. Sometimes it's being ignored until you stop existing." Elena's chest tightened. When the speaker asked if anyone else wanted to share, a silence hung heavy in the air. Then, slowly, Elena raised her hand. And for the first time, she told her story, not to friends, not to family, but to strangers. Her voice didn't shake. Her words were clear. Each sentence a release, each memory a flame turned into ash. Some nodded. Others cried. And afterward, a woman approached her and whispered, "Thank you. I needed to hear that. I thought I was alone." That night, Elena didn't just feel relief, she felt pride. She had survived. And now, she was helping others survive too. A few weeks later, she started a small blog. She called it The Quiet Escape. It began as a private journal, a space to reflect. But soon, she began publishing her entries, pieces of herself stitched into words, about healing, about grief, about choosing oneself after being chosen last for too long. Women from across the country messaged her. "I thought I was the only one. Your story gave me courage. You helped me leave. You saved me." And slowly, Elena's pain transformed into something far more powerful, purpose. One evening, while sipping tea on her balcony, she received another message. This time, it was from Monique. "Just so you know. David is already seeing someone else. Thought you'd want to hear it from me." Elena stared at the screen for a moment. Then she turned the phone face down. No anger. No sadness. Not even surprise. Just silence. A silence that felt like peace. She didn't need revenge. Or apologies. Or explanations. She didn't need closure from the people who once made her beg to be seen. Because her healing, her wholeness, was never meant for them. It was hers. Months passed. Then a year. And with each passing season, Elena grew lighter. Her laughter became effortless again. Her eyes no longer carried the weight of holding back tears. She wasn't afraid to speak. She no longer flinched at loud voices. She no longer waited to be told who she was. She had lost a lot. But what she gained was greater. Herself. Her once hidden notebook was now full, not with sorrow, but with bold, defiant declarations. On the very last page, she wrote. "I didn't just walk away from them. I walked back to me." One rainy Saturday morning, Elena sat near her window, watching raindrops race down the glass. The city outside was hushed, like it was holding its breath. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and cupped her hands around a steaming mug of tea. The soft hum of music played from her phone. Her apartment was quiet. Safe. Still. The peace she once prayed for now lived in her home, in her skin. Her phone buzzed gently. It was a message from a young woman who had been following her blog. "Your story gave me the strength to leave. I was scared. But now I'm free. Thank you. You saved me." Elena read the message twice. Then tears filled her eyes. Not from pain. But from a deep, overwhelming sense of connection, of meaning. She held the phone to her chest and exhaled, remembering how small she had once felt. How invisible. How crushed. How she believed, for far too long, that her voice didn't matter. Now she knew better. She wasn't just someone who survived abuse. She was someone who turned her survival into a lighthouse. She stood and walked over to her mirror. No makeup. No fancy clothes. Just her, whole, soft, and strong. She looked into her own reflection and whispered, "I'm proud of you." Not many people knew what she had endured. Fewer would truly understand. And that was okay. She didn't need applause. Her quiet victory was enough. She had walked through fire, and come out whole. She pulled her notebook out again. The last page was already full. So she turned to the inside of the back cover and wrote one final thought. Healing doesn't always look loud. Sometimes, it looks like this. A quiet morning. A soft smile. A life rebuilt from the inside out. Then she set the notebook down, made herself another cup of tea, and returned to the window, watching the rain. At peace. At last.